In 1814, the 18-year-old writer Mary Shelley was traveling through Germany when she stopped in the town of Darmstadt, nestled in the foothills below the ancient ruins of Frankenstein Castle. While in town, she might have heard rumors of the infamous figure who once dwelt within those castle walls, a grave-robbing alchemist who carried out fiendish experiments in his efforts to reanimate the dead. Now, whether or not Shelley actually heard these rumors is still subject to speculation. However, we all know the following. Just 4 years later, Mary Shelley goes on to publish her world-changing masterpiece, Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, in which the titular scientist's quest to unlock the secrets of life and death unleashes monstrous consequences that threaten to destroy humanity. But tonight we are not here to talk about the fictional Frankenstein. Oh no, we are here to discuss the man behind the legend, Dr. Johann Konrad Dippel, whose blood-stained discoveries took humanity to its highest heights before eventually plummeting humanity towards its lowest depths. Dippel was born in 1673 in Castle Frankenstein. His father was a Lutheran priest who lived inside the castle, and that is why when 18 years later, Dippel is admitted into Gießen University, his name is recorded in the university ledgers as Dippel Frankensteiniensis, or Dippel from Frankenstein. At the university, Dippel studies philosophy, alchemy, theology, and eventually he does go on to get his doctorate in medicine. But
science!
Medicine, yeah. But Dippel's initial profession is in the field of theology. He is a religious scholar. He publishes numerous essays under the obnoxious pen name of Christianus Democritus. He needs a Twitter account. So like Dippel's initial essays when he's like 20, all about how like if you don't rigorously adhere to Orthodox Lutheranism, then you're a fucking heretic. But then, he does the Gen Z trick of doing a complete 180 and declares that if you don't follow the universal oneness through meditation to achieve God's love, then you're a fucking dipshit. Which means, over the course of his brief theological career, he manages to alienate and anger everybody in the local scholarly theological community. Like, as one of his contemporaries, the scholar Emanuel Swedenborg goes on to say, Dippel is the most vile devil, bound to no principles. In respect to those he deceives, he takes away all their understanding of truth and good, leaving them in a kind of delirium. Scoundrel! As Dippel's enemies attack him verbally, Dippel strikes back physically. He kills a man in a duel, and then has to flee the Polizei. He goes off the grid for a couple of years, hiding out, but is briefly seen in the vicinity of Castle Frankenstein circa 1700. And this is the point where Dippel turns away from the path of God and isolates himself in the pursuit of the dark alchemical arts. And friends, you have to understand that in 1700, Frankenstein Castle is mostly abandoned, but parts of it are being used as a local prison. And when the prisoners die, they are buried on castle grounds, and supposedly a peasant sees Dippel digging up the bodies and dragging them off to his dungeon lab for experimentation.
Science!
What could Dippel have possibly been doing with those corpses?
Science!
To try to answer that question, you have to read through Dippel's published writings in the field of alchemy, particularly his book, The Maladies and Remedies of the Life of the Flesh, in which he writes that theoretically it is possible to transfer the soul from one body to another using a funnel. Now, to be fair, Dippel never actually writes whether or not he attempted this experiment. Possibly because he doesn't want local authorities reading this stuff and then like burning him as a witch. But we all know. He's thought about it. He does go into detail about experiments that he actually carried out, which mostly involve animal dissection. Because PETA is not a thing back then. Dippel cuts up a whole bunch of cats and cows in his pursuit of the elusive elixir vitae, the elixir of life, which, according to legend, will cure every possible disease. And lo and behold, Dippel stumbles upon the recipe for that elusive elixir. And it's quite simple, really. You can do it in the confines of your own home. Just get a bunch of dried beef blood, bones, and hooves, and put them in a flask. Heat up the flask while first pumping out the oxygen to ensure the material boils and doesn't burn. It condenses into a vapor. You cool it down, and then you get this thick, tar-like oil, which today we refer to as Dippel's oil. Now, Dippel distills this stuff, and he takes one swift, and he declares, "It's the elixir of life! Of life!" Dippel is so confident in his discovery that he goes to the local prince, Charles I of Hesse, and he makes the prince an offer. He will trade the secret to his cancer-curing elixir in exchange for the deed to Frankenstein Castle. The prince tells Dippel to go fuck himself. For 2 reasons. First of all, Dippel's elixir looks like shit. But more importantly, it smells like shit. The smell is so bad that its only real use is as an insect repellent. Like, peasants try smearing this crap on their crops to keep the bugs away, but it's just too nasty to work with. Not to be deterred by failure, Dippel takes his elixir to the newly created kingdom of Prussia. And it is in Prussia where Dippel will find his fortune. Because Dippel has the side hustle going in Berlin. He is Airbnb part of his lab with a local dye merchant named Diesbach. And Diesbach, one day in 1704, he's just trying to create some red paint, as one does, using the standard methods of the time. You take a bunch of little red insects, you crush them up into a paste, add some potassium to make the paste nice and sticky, and then, boom, you have paint from the insect guts. Only when Diesbach carries out this procedure, he's shocked to discover that the paint he had created is not red. Oh no. Instead, it is in an earthly shade of blue. Which is a huge deal. In 1704, blue paint is really hard to come by. The only way to create blue paint is to crush up the precious gemstone lapis lazuli, which isn't even found in like Europe. You can't mine it in Europe. You have to go all the way to the deep dark mines of faraway Afghanistan, drag it up, then like take it across Asia to North Africa, where it's then transported by to Venice and ground up into paint. The Europeans refer to the resulting color as the color from beyond the sea, which in Latin translates to ultramarine. Now, ultramarine is so expensive that it's worth 10 times the price of gold, which means the ability to turn red paint into blue is more valuable than turning lead into gold. Random chemical progress. Alright, so of course at Diesbach, he goes to Dippel, he's excited, he's like, "Bro, what the fuck just happened?" And Dippel, he responds, "Oh, I must have splooged my elixir of life all over your equipment." Like, it happens. And unbeknownst to Dippel, the iron from the beef blood and the nitrogen from the bones have reacted with the potassium to create history's first synthetic pigment, which today we refer to as Prussian blue. And Diesbach and Dippel, they start manufacturing this stuff, and the Deutschmarks come rolling in. And because Prussian blue takes the European art world by storm. Because previously, ultramarine is so pricey, you can only really use it for, like painting like the Virgin Mary's robes if the church gives you founding, and they only give you money for the Virgin Mary. So, there's only so many Virgin Marys you can take before you get bored in the art world. But Prussian blue is cheap, so now you can use it to create more secular imagery. Eventually it spreads as far as Japan, completely transforming the Japanese art of printmaking, becoming the dominant color in Japanese wood prints, leading to such masterpieces as Hokusai's The Great Wave, which in turn influences European artists like Van Gogh. The Prussian blue spirals in his Starry Night mirror the spiraling blue of Hokusai's wave. And as Prussian blue rises in the art world, it mirrors the rise of Prussia as a military power. So much so that it becomes a symbol of Prussian military pride and is adopted as the official color of Prussian military uniforms. And this is where I must emphasize that Prussian blue is linked to Prussian militarism, imperialism, and bloodshed. It is in some ways a dangerous color, which is perhaps why in 1752, when chemist Pierre Macaire is trying to decompose science, this is real science this time, components, he boils it, unwittingly unleashing a toxic, noxious gas, which today is known as hydrogen cyanide. From the Greek word kainos, which means deep blue. This stuff is so deadly that its only real use is as an insecticide. By the 19th century, American citrus farmers used this crap to fumigate their crops. They put their orange trees in a box, let the gas loose, kill the insects. It's a practice that continues into the earlier 20th century, when the most popular brand of hydrogen cyanide in the United States, it's called the Cyclone. Meanwhile, on former Prussian territory, scientists are busy creating a new, better version of the Cyclone, which they call Zyklon B. And by the 1940s, as Zyklon B is being pumped through the gas chambers of Europe and killing millions of Jews, it reacts with iron and transforms back into paint, staining the gas chamber walls with an unearthly shade of blue. Prussian blue, in some ways, is a cursed color. Hokusai lost his life's work in a fire, Van Gogh took his own life, and Dr. Dippel's life was cursed. In 1707, he insults the king and is forced to flee Prussia. Meanwhile, his unscrupulous business partners steal his secret manufacturing protocols and he goes broke. And while he's hiding out in Denmark, he is sentenced to life imprisonment. He is eventually released after many years and he remains unbroken. He continues trying to perfect the recipe for his elixir of life, declaring in 1733 that he's come up with a new, better recipe which will allow him to live to be 135 years old. He dies the next year. Probably poisoned by his own smelly concoction. Today, his legacy is primarily linked to the literature he potentially inspired. But Dippel was so much more than that. He was a philosopher, a scholar, a doctor. Without him, we wouldn't have our Starry Night. His life was a swirl of light and darkness, as is the case of many of our lives, which is why I would now like to raise my glass and offer a toast. May the swirling colors within us overcome all darkness. Cheers! Yeah.